The lectionary, from which we take the readings for Mass, was revised in 1969 after the Second Vatican Council. The Sunday readings are on a 3-year cycle. Generally, Matthew 1 year, Mark another year, Luke during year C, which is a current year we're in. John's Gospel is sprinkled throughout the different cycles, especially during Easter. And to pair with these Gospel readings, we have selections from the Old Testament for our first reading, and selections from Paul and the other epistles for the second reading. So you put that all together, and you have the readings we hear every Sunday. So I was doing the math the other day, and in the 50 years that the current lectionary has been in use, we've heard each cycle of the readings, at least those of us who were born before 1969, we've heard each cycle of the readings 16 or 17 times. And since I've been ordained, this is the 6th time this particular set of readings has come up, theoretically. Theoretically, because I know I've heard the story of Zacchaeus many times. I can't ever, however, recall hearing today's first reading. At least I don't remember it. And I went through my files. I have everything. And there's a big hole where there should be the 31st Sunday in Ordinary Time, Year C. So who says nothing new happens at Mass? The first reading from the Book of Wisdom is a beautiful prayer. I've been praying with it all week, something you might want to do in the coming week. It is from the second half of the Book of Wisdom, which is basically a homily on the Exodus, done as an apostrophe to God, done where the speaker breaks away from the audience and addresses God directly. Just like when Paul says, "O death, where is thy sting?" Or when Juliet picks up Romeo's dagger and says, "O happy dagger, this is thy sheath." It recalls for the Jews in Alexandria that once before they had suffered in Egypt and that the Lord came to their rescue. It provides a historical basis for trusting God because God came through. God always comes through, is the point of this writer of the Book of Wisdom. This great and mighty God to whom the people of Israel are bound by a covenant. And it begins, "Before the Lord, the whole universe is as a grain from a balance, or a drop of morning dew come down upon the earth." It starts off with an acknowledgement of the greatness of God, of this God before whom all else pales, compared to whom everything else is insignificant. Of the immanence of God, the imperishable Spirit God is called, who is manifest in our material world and at the same time transcendent, independent of that material world which God created. Aquinas said that we cannot grasp what God is. You can tell Father JP I quoted Aquinas. We cannot grasp what God is, but only what God is not, and how other beings stand in relation to God. Before the Lord, the whole universe is as a grain from a balance, or a drop of morning dew come down on the earth. And then addressing God directly, the prayer says, "But you have mercy on all, because you can do all things, and you overlook people's sins that they may repent. For you love all things that are, and loathe nothing that you have made. For what you hated, you would not have fashioned." It is a recognition that God is merciful above all things, of the mercy and love that characterizes the Creator who loves all of creation, especially those created in God's own image and likeness. And how could a thing remain, our reading says? How could a thing remain unless you willed it, or be preserved had it not been called forth by you? But you spare all things, because they are yours, O Lord, and lover of souls. For your imperishable Spirit is in all things. Again, the imperishable Spirit, the breath of life put into creatures by God, who breathes life into all of creation, and does so with conscious intent. How could a thing remain unless you willed it? The writer is insisting that things don't just happen because we have a God who is in relationship with us. And then it reminds us that there are those who turn away from God, but that in the end, the mercy of God is always triumphant. Therefore, you rebuke offenders little by little. Warn them and remind them of the sins they are committing, that they may abandon their wickedness and believe in you, O Lord. It is from the own lived experience of the people of Israel, who time and again rejected God and time and again were called back, who were invited back into the loving arms of the God who had chosen them. Unfaithful as they were, God was always faithful. God was always merciful. God was always loving. Nowhere more evident than when they were being rescued from slavery. So I think it bears repeating. Before the Lord, the whole universe is as a grain from a balance, or a drop of morning dew come down upon the earth. But you have mercy on all, because you can do all things, and you overlook people's sins that they may repent. For you love all things that are, and loathe nothing that you have made. For what you hated, you would not have fashioned. And how could a thing remain unless you willed it, or be preserved had it not been called forth by you? But you spare all things because they are yours, O Lord, and lover of souls. For your imperishable spirit is in all things. Therefore you rebuke offenders little by little, warn them and remind them of the sins they are committing, that they may abandon their wickedness and believe in you, O Lord.